331 BC, the plains of Gaugamela. Two empires collide for the fate of the world. On one side stands Darius III, King of Kings, with perhaps the largest army ever assembled in antiquity. Over 100,000 men, scythed chariots, war elephants, and the legendary Immortals. On the other, a 25-year-old Macedonian with barely 47,000. This is the story of how Alexander the Great turned certain defeat into absolute victory, using one of the most brilliant and difficult tactics of the entire ancient era. Darius had learned from past mistakes. At Issus, he'd been trapped on narrow ground. This time, he chose a vast, flat plain he had leveled overnight, perfect for his chariots and endless cavalry. He was confident. He placed himself in the center behind the 10,000 Immortals. On his left, the elite Bactrian and Scythian horsemen under Bessus. A huge reserve waited to exploit any mistake. Alexander knew he was outnumbered at least 2-1, probably far worse. His plan was almost insane. He formed his army in the usual way, the deep phalanx in the center, hypaspists and companion cavalry on the right under his personal command, Parmenion holding the left with Thessalian horse. Then he did something strange. He refused his right wing. He angled it backward and began drifting, slowly, deliberately, further and further to the right, away from the center. To Persian eyes, it looked like the Macedonians were scared, trying to slide out of encirclement. Darius took the bait. He saw the Macedonian line stretching, the right wing drifting outward, and a gap slowly opening between Alexander's center and his right. He ordered Bessus and the massed cavalry of his left wing to swing wide and envelop that drifting flank. Exactly what Alexander wanted. As the Persian left rode hard to chase him, they pulled farther and farther away from their own center. A dangerous hole began to appear in the Persian line. Meanwhile, on the Macedonian left, all hell broke loose. Scythed chariots thundered forward. The phalanx opened lanes like clockwork, let the chariots blast through, then speared horses and drivers as they passed. But the real hammer blow came from Persian heavy cavalry smashing into Parmenion's wing. The Macedonian left started to buckle. Desperate messengers galloped to Alexander. "We're being crushed, send help!" Alexander ignored them. Because at that precise moment, the trap was sprung. With the Persian left now miles out of position, with Darius and the Immortals fully committed, Alexander wheeled his companion's hard left, like the closing blade of a knife. He had created a perfect angled pocket. Helmet flashing with white plumes, Alexander personally led the charge of 1,800 companion cavalry straight into the exposed Persian flank and center. At the same instant, the second line of the phalanx and light troops poured into the gap the Persians themselves had opened. It was hammer and anvil, but diagonal, on a gigantic scale. The companions carved through noblemen and satraps like a hot blade through wax. They reached the royal bodyguard. They reached Darius himself. For the second time in his life, the King of Kings saw death riding straight at him. He turned his chariot and fled. When the Persian king runs, the army dies. Panic spread like wildfire. But Alexander could not chase yet. Parmenion was still fighting for his life. So Alexander did the impossible again. He turned his exhausted companions a full 180 degrees and galloped back across the chaos to relieve his beleaguered left. Only a genius commander with troops trained to absolute perfection could execute a double envelopment in the middle of a battlefield that size. By nightfall, the greatest empire on earth lay shattered. Darius escaped, but his mystique was gone forever. Babylon, Susa, Persepolis would fall within months. Gaugamela was not won by numbers. It was won by deliberately creating a false weakness, luring the enemy to overextend, and then striking at the exact moment and place where the enemy line had fatally thinned. Alexander later called Gaugamela his greatest victory. Napoleon studied it. West Point still teaches it. Because sometimes the way to destroy an army twice your size is not to fight harder, but to fight smarter. Thanks for watching. If you want the full story of how Alexander trained men to do the impossible, or what happened when he finally hunted Darius down, let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.